You're listening to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. We have a wonderful guest today. We always have wonderful guests, but this individual is a delight. I've met her at cons. She's always so sweet and charming and really freaking smart and talented. And I really enjoyed talking with her, Bonnie Wright. If you like this episode, we urge you to stick around because we talk about mental health, life, all that stuff that really helps everyone out there. It's not just a celebrity chat. And we hope you get something out of it. And I think that the show has been a little more successful because we keep it real here. So if you really enjoy this episode, I hope you'll subscribe and listen to more episodes because I think you'll learn something. The handles on socials, Ryan.
At Inside of You Pod on X.
Or Twitter.
At Inside of You Podcast on Instagram and Facebook.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube and all that. You can go to the Inside of You online store and get tons of Smallville merch, signs, scripts, pictures, ship keys from the show, and a bunch of cool Inside of You merch, new tumblers and zip-up jackets that are dope. So really appreciate it. Also my band, Sunspin. Go to sunspin.com, get a Zoom with me, listen to our music. We're coming out with a new album. We've got vinyls on the Inside of You online store available. Actually, sunspin.com is where you get your vinyls. There's not many vinyls left. We made vinyls, Ryan. Very exciting
That's
stuff.
very exciting.
Very exciting stuff.
Weird, wild stuff.
And you can also, for upcoming cons, go to my link tree on at the Michael Rosenbaum on Instagram, and you can see, my Cameo and where I'm going, Tom Welling and I doing cons and evening events with me and Tom and so much stuff, fun stuff. And I hope you'll keep supporting the podcast by joining patreon.com/inside of you to give back to the show if you're enjoying it. And it keeps us going. Without you, we couldn't do it. So without further ado, let's get into the fascinating, wonderful Bonnie Wright.
It's my point of view. You're listening to Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum was not recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Hey folks, wanted to highlight something important before today's episode. In case you weren't aware, myself and many of the guests are on strike alongside SAG-AFTRA and WGA. Today's episode and any we air before the strike ends were recorded before it began. So this is just a heads up in relation to some for the topics we may discuss. If you want more info on the strike, visit sagaftrastrike.org. Now let's get into it.
Did you come from like a family that was very proper or very, because sometimes the stereotype is, and look, my dad's not English, but he was, I grew up with someone who was, emotionally not there. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering sometimes, I wonder how, upbringings from friends.
Yeah.
How was your sort of life?
I wouldn't say proper in that, in that, manners were more important than emotions. I definitely was able to express my emotions before I worried how I looked or how I sat at the table. But at the same time, I definitely was caught out often by my parents of doing something that was, I don't know, elbows on the table or eating with my mouth full, all those obvious things that I'm pleased they taught me how to do.
Oh, see, my parents didn't really do that. And that's hence you see me and you're like, that's why he's this guy. But, what my dad did was I remember him yelling at me one day at the kitchen table because we were eating meat. I don't remember, meatloaf. My mom had made this meatloaf. Oh my God. I don't want to talk about it. But I remember I had milk. I had a glass of milk. I felt like a glass of milk. And he goes, take that milk away from the table right now. Put it away. You don't have milk at the dinner table. And I don't to this day know why.
No sense. The pairing is great. You should try it.
Yeah. But it never talked about me leaning or putting my elbows on the table or your parents seemed like they were jewelry. They had a jewelry store, right?
Yeah, they still do. So yeah, they
still.
Yeah.
How many years?
Oh, probably 45 years they've been working together, or maybe more. long time.
What's it called? Wright jewelry?
Wright and Teague. So my
Wright and
mum's last
Teague.
name is Teague, yeah.
Really?
So yeah, their whole life and work and everything is together.
Do you find jewelry interesting, or do you like? You do.
Yeah.
You think that what your
I couldn't.
parents?
It's pretty hard not to.
I guess.
yeah.
Yeah. Well.
I think to not just jewelry how it looks, but also I respect their like craft behind it and the technicality behind it. And I feel having grown up around that, and then also growing up around everyone's incredible technical skills and crafts on a film set, I feel like I have great respect for people who are really good at their field. If that makes
Right.
sense.
When your husband asked you to marry him, when he gave you a ring, did he go to your parents for the ring?
Yeah, he also knew I'd be so picky that we actually like designed it together, so it wasn't a surprise.
Really?
Yeah, I wanted to be part of the choosing of the stone and the making it with my parents.
Did he get a discount from your parents?
Yeah, you don't so.
I mean,
Yeah, oh, come on, of course.
of course. They're like, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll give you 10%
Yeah,
off. You're marrying our
10%.
daughter. Would they have been pissed if he didn't ask them to?
Oh yeah, that would just be.
You wouldn't have gotten
just
married
no,
to him, probably.
no.
You'd
They'd
be like, are you kidding me?
you got it all wrong. Yeah,
Yeah, right? It's like your parents owning a big hotel, and he's like, I'm going to stay somewhere else.
yeah.
It's just rude. There's
also,
no manners
why
there.
when it's just there for you? You don't even have to make a choice. It's ready.
Yeah. But then he probably thought I would have been like paranoid at the thought of maybe, I don't know, it's too easy. She's going to think that it was so easy. So I just went to her parents. I took advantage. But that's not how it worked.
No. Considering I don't wear any other jewelry that's by anyone else but my parents. So it's not even like there's stuff styled into my life that's not made by them.
But most of the stuff you do wear is from your parents?
Yeah, all of it. I've never.
Wait, what? What? You've
Yeah.
never owned any jewelry other than what your parents have made?
No.
So-
Why? I love it so much and it's there and it's accessible. It's like a girl's dream, just having like a jewelry box that's just never ending.
You can call whenever you want. You're like, what do you call your dad? Dad?
Dad, yeah.
Not Papa? What do the English say? Just Dad?
Dad, yeah.
Just Daddy?
Just dad or daddy.
Daddy?
Not just dad.
Oh, I want an Oompa Loompa now.
Yeah. I want it.
do you call and say, I really want this necklace, like a necklace that's, made of whatever. Could you guys do that for me?
I've never really done like custom things with them because that's not really what they do. But I feel like anytime I'm like in their workshop or their space, I, try things on and, oh, that looks so nice. And
Do you
I
just
like
take it?
Sometimes, or just given in that way. But often, most of the time when I get new jewelry is like every birthday is usually when I get a piece of jewelry.
Do they ever say, no, Bonnie, you cannot have that. It's too expensive. You need to sell that.
Sometimes, like, you can have that in silver, not gold. I'm like, oh, okay, fine.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I mean, were they tough on you at all, or were they, sort of like, we just want you to be happy? Because some, parents are different. Some parents are like, I want you to do this. You're going to go to school. You're going to get an education. You're going to do this. And others are just sort of like, I don't really care. I'm not,
Yeah, I feel, there was never a pressure to do a certain thing or like continue education or kind of act or different things like that. It was very much like, do you like this idea? Are you happy? If you're happy, then great. I think there are definitely people who love and seek like life experiences that are challenging and inspiring. So if they feel like I'm being challenged and inspired, then they probably think it's the right way to go. I'm sure there's been times in my life where they've kind of held their opinions and let me figure it out for myself, as we all should make mistakes and do different things. But there was never, like a pressure, so to speak. I mean, they definitely have a strong work ethic and they're very creative and they like to produce a lot of things. So that kind of level of
that was instilled on you,
expression
sort of
and-
like
yeah,
inadvertently. Like
definitely,
they just from them doing it was enough for you to go, I need to do this. I'm compelled to do this.
Yeah, I definitely think I was never going to become like a lazy person or a non-creative person. Having grown up with them, it was kind of
What
like
about your brother?
He's an artist. He went to art school too and studied fine art, and so he also is in the creative world.
Does he ever ask for residuals from the Harry Potter movies? Because I read that. Is it true that he was the one who was reading the books, and then he says to you, You just remind me of Ginny Weasley.
Yeah, he was really specific. People like heard that they were making them into movies and auditioning, and he was like, you need to go for the role of Ginny Weasley. I was like, okay, don't even know who that is or like what this book is, but it sounds fun.
Did you read it before you?
So yeah, before I went to the first audition, I read the first book, which Ginny isn't really in that much at all. So I didn't really get a sense of her. She obviously comes through more in the second book. But it was very much, I looked up to my brother massively and was very in awe of him. So if he had like an idea, I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I'm grateful he had that great casting ability to.
I mean, what are the odds though? Could you imagine your brother just goes, you should be this character. Go find a way to audition for one of the biggest movies ever. That I guess you knew the books were huge, so it was potential that the movies were going to be big. But like, I mean, where do you even go? Is it something that, where did you grow up in London? Mm-hmm. So they just had casting in London?
No, it wasn't like an open casting. So my mum, I think they came home from work and we were like, we want to find how we get an audition in Harry Potter. My parents are like, I have no idea. We don't know anyone in the entertainment industry. So my mum, being clever and like ready for the challenge of like figuring it out, called the publishers in the UK, which is Bloomsbury Publishers. They gave her the casting director's number or contact or whatever. She contacted them and they said, okay, sure, if you want to send in some pictures of Bonnie and if she could write a couple sentences of why she wants to play Ginny. And
what did you say?
I don't know. My mum still has the sentences somewhere I wrote down. I'll have to find it.
I think she's confident and smart, and
I think I'd be a great Ginny.
You were 9.
Yes, I was 9. And then I went, for in total just 2 auditions. One just with the casting director, and then the second with David Heyman, the producer, and Christopher Columbus, the director.
How big was the how many lines did you have for this audition?
So I didn't even because Ginny had no lines in the first film. The actual line I had in the film, which was one line, was given to me on the day. Chris Columbus was like,
at
I think
the train
you need
station
a line.
or whatever,
which was my good luck to Harry. So I actually read Hermione lines because they didn't have any other scene for me to read. So they were like, okay, you're gonna have to just read this character. So I read,
And were you nervous?
Yeah, I was nervous. I think
You've done some plays in school, but nothing really
nothing.
big.
I honestly did not think I was going to get it. I was just like, this could be fun. Let's go see what an audition's like. I was someone who, as a kid, like loved taking part in everything, but I was never, and still not, not competitive. Like I love for instance, I used to love sports, but I never probably would have gotten anywhere because I just wasn't competitive. So my brother and I were just like, let's go and just check this out kind of thing. And did not, just walked away from the first audition being like, I don't know what that was. I don't think
Forgot about it. That was fun. Moving on.
And then it was quite a while after when we got like the call back to then come and meet David Heyman and Christopher Columbus, and I was like way more nervous for that. I was like, oh gosh,
I'm meeting with the guy who found America. No, it's not that Christopher Columbus. Come on,
not that one. Please, it was the other one. But yeah, so I was like pretty nervous.
Wow.
Yeah, and then still, I just was like, oh. Anyone going for this audition has probably been acting since they were like crawling around in commercials. I don't know, like since they were babies. So, and I think, a lot of us hadn't had any experience when we were cast in those movies. And I think that was a good thing in a way because all of us were kind of open for the experience and we didn't have too much of an idea or like we weren't overly sort of aware of ourselves.
Or prepared.
We're just kids playing
kids. You're just kids.
Yeah.
And that was all of them. That was Matthew Lewis, our friend. Neville Longbottom. That was Tom Felton.
Yeah.
Who hadn't done much, right?
He had done, The Borrowers. Do you remember that?
No.
That's a great film.
But it was a great film. Oh, so he had some
experience. Done a little
experience.
bit. And Daniel had done a bit.
The Phelps brothers.
They hadn't done anything.
Anything.
So yeah, a lot of people.
That's got to be comforting knowing no one else knows what the hell they're doing either, except for the older guys.
Yeah. I think the hardest thing for me was when I had my scene, they'd already been sort of halfway through the shoot. So when I stepped on, that kind of everything had been a bit figured out. And so I was definitely very nervous and felt like I was just totally in the deep end of the pool, like, what am I doing? But I was really lucky. Julie Walters, who plays my mum in the film Mrs. Weasley, really took me under her wing and saw that I was probably just like a deer in headlights. Just what is going on? I don't know anything about any technical.
Do you still talk to her?
I haven't seen her in a long time, but yeah, we still are in contact. And she really made me feel safe and like I was meant to be there. So I'm very grateful for that.
I mean, you know what I think? I think like, okay, the books, even in the books, well, had all the books come out when the movies were being made?
No. So everyone's fate of their character wasn't even
right.
decided.
Because if you knew that you ended up with Harry at the end, like if you knew it from the beginning, you'd be like, well, they've gotta. I mean, this is a part that has to keep going. But you didn't know that. Inside of You is brought to you by Neurohacker. Ryan, what if I told you that you could have extreme focus, energy, feel better by taking something a couple of times a month?
That'd be great.
Yeah, well, it's here. Quality of Mind. It's something I've been working on. Obviously not working on, but I've been using. And it is just extraordinary how something can work so fast. Usually, for me anyway, it takes if you take something, they're like, oh, wait 3 or 5 years. And you'll start to, with this, I started feeling it right away. I started feeling more focused. I started having more energy, more clarity. This stuff works for me. Quality of Mind by Neurohacker. It really is amazing. It combines 28 of some of the most research-backed nootropic ingredients on Earth and an ultimate brain feel formula. Quality of Mind, it's been changing lives for years now, Ryan. If you deal with brain fog like me, memory lapses like Ryan, sluggish thinking like everyone, try Quality of Mind.
It's an all-vegan formula with potent, bioavailable ingredients.
This company is 100% transparent. No proprietary blends. In fact, if you don't have clearer thinking in 100 days, they'll give you your money back. Nothing else out there comes close, guys. I told the story of that I got this. I thought I had ordered it because I maybe saw it online. It just came to me and I just started using it, not even knowing they were a sponsor at the time. And I noticed that it started helping me. So I kept taking it. And here I am, so clear. Crystal clear. Ryan, as you know, I get asked to advertise a lot of products, and I like to pick products that work for me. So when I'm telling people out there, hey, I know these products work for me, and that's why I share them with you. And, I deal with being sluggish all the time and brain fogs and all that stuff. But, the proof is something directly that moves it to the top of the list for me. And for my mental performance, by far, focus, memory, willpower. My experience of adding Quality of Mind to my brain health supports regimen has been pretty freaking profound. If you've been listening to me in 2023 and you're still not prioritizing your brain health, then listen closely. Because adding nootropics to my diet helped my willpower and productivity go through the roof.
Again, Neurohacker has a special deal. Receive $100 off your first bottle, which is just $1.95 a day.
Way less than a basic cup of coffee and with way more benefits. Try it for 100 days. If you aren't 100% satisfied, 100% money back guarantee. See what one of the best brain fuel formulas on earth can do for your mindset. Go to neurohacker.com/IOU. And as a listener of Inside of You, use code IOU at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase.
That's neurohacker.com/IOU to try Quality of Mind with code IOU to experience life-changing mental performance.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The products and statements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This message is sponsored by Discover. Did you know you could reduce the number of unwanted calls and emails with online privacy protection? The latest innovation from Discover. Discover will help regularly remove your personal info, like your name and address, from 10 popular people search websites that could sell your data. And they'll do it for free. Activate in the Discover app. See terms and learn more at discover.com/online privacy protection. How many books were out by this time?
I think there were 4 or 3, definitely 3, maybe 4.
But no one told you what was going to happen.
No, didn't know. So yeah, I mean, every time a book came out, I was there at the bookstore the day it came out, like everyone else, like reading it. And it was always hard because I loved the world, I loved the story, I loved the book. But of course, you're not going to be reading the book, and every time Ginny pops up, you're going to be like, oh, what's she doing, kind of thing. So it was always quite a disjointed reading experience because you kind of were reading it like for the story and the wider narrative, and then also just projecting, oh gosh, I might have to do this now in the film.
And when did you know that? Like, did they tell you after the first one that you're coming back?
Yeah, I think the first. I think so. I think they knew they were going to make two. I think that I can't even remember now, but I think they knew they were going to make two and kind of like made everyone commit to the two. But then for a lot of the films, it was just like they kind of committed just one at a time. And then I think by the fourth or fifth one, it was like, okay, everyone, you got to commit to the end now. Like you're either in it or not, which I get if they didn't want someone being, that character and everyone associating that actor with that character and then suddenly not completing the full, 8 films. So yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that they were going to make them all, and they were very successful. So
yeah, did you remember anyone ever getting fired or was supposed to play a part and then they didn't continue it and someone else can? Besides, obviously, Richard Harris passed away, and so Michael Gambon took over Dumbledore.
Not that I remember.
You weren't privy to that information.
I wasn't privy to that, but there wasn't anyone, who came and then they sort of disappeared that I was aware of.
Right.
Unless they were very good at, hiding their
secrets. Who did you notice, like, what comes to mind when you think of, like, besides yourself, how much you grew as an actor, but who else when you were watching, because you really started with all these young kids, your peers, who did you notice, wow, they really became a great actor. They really impressed you. What was...
I feel Rupert, who plays Ron, I feel like his just ability to play that comedic timing and his ease of the way he played Ron was just so brilliant to watch. I feel like as we all were kids playing kids, I feel like there was a massive part of Ron probably inside him as his own character. But I just feel like, yeah, there were parts of his character that became more challenging and not just this comedic kind of role. So it was always lovely watching him. And I think he was very effortless in the way he acted, or it seemed that way. I'm sure it wasn't in his practice. But I also think, there's obviously Harry, Ron, and Hermione, but then there's also Neville, Luna, and Ginny that really kind of club together as this kind of group in the 5th film with Dumbledore's army. And then they really go through to kind of be their kind of sidekicks, I guess, in some of the big showdown moments. So I really enjoyed working with, Ivana and Matt and having that big opportunity we had for our characters to just get just that bit more into the action. And it was really lovely to like work alongside them as we kind of had that opportunity. And I think all of us the 3 of us were like very grateful for that, for our characters. So it was nice to share that together.
What about your parents? What are they thinking now that your mom helps you sort of find the publishers who find this, who you get an audition and you meet Chris Columbus and you get the part and you have one line that you improvise on or they gave you on set and they're like, oh, okay, that's cute. She's part of this big thing. But, when did they go, oh my gosh, you are part of that. You really are part of this.
Yeah, I think it was also sometimes even when we were filming it hard to fathom the scale as it was like growing into this phenomenon. And I think often it was really weirdly the premieres that made you kind of just the noise of the fans in Leicester Square and hearing like, oh, whoa, it's a huge, this is a massive deal. And, every year I went to the premieres with my family and it always felt like they were the moments where we kind of looked at each other like, what is this? What are we in? Like, this is wild. So it was always fun to feel those moments because often it was such a kind of close-knit community on the set. Sometimes it didn't even just became really normal, as life does, whatever your normal is. So those were kind of cool. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they were, as any parent is, like worried as well as excited, just to make sure that I feel
Safe.
Yeah, safe, protected, happy, still doing it. I think from 9 to 19 years old, as I was in the series, like that's a massive period of your life where like a lot is going on.
I mean, you're really growing up.
Yeah.
And you still have a lot to do. 19 is still young, so, but those are like, that's 10 years of your life. That's half of your first 19 years. You're on set, you're experiencing this world fame. How did you take it? Like, did people recognize you instantly?
Yeah. I mean, obviously as the character grew, it was like an inevitable thing that would grow into being more recognizable. I mean, I feel on the scale of some of the other actors, I feel, I had a relatively, like I could still have a normal life. I took the tube to school and I went, I lived in the heart of London and I was kind of out and about and doing my thing. There were some days where you did suddenly be like, oh my God, I want to, run away and hide in a box or something. And then other days it was like, kind of forgot that I played this big character. So it ebbed and flowed. And I think as you're going through those kind of awkward teenage years, sometimes it's quite difficult because you often just want to kind of be swallowed up with the crowd, as you sometimes do as a teenager in those awkward days or moments when you don't feel great. So that was sometimes challenging, just when you're kind of figuring out who you are anyway. And then people have this idea of who you are.
Right.
It's like I guess I'm that person, but I'm also like all these other people that I'm figuring out.
Yeah. Were you, it just seems like I was so immature. I'm still immature. But I feel like if I had that sort of fame, I don't know, I might be like, kind of acting a certain way, maybe in front of my parents, like, you're talking to a star. Hello, jeweler. Listen.
Wait a minute.
I mean, were you at all, did your mom ever have to put you in place? Or like, all right, listen, Miss Actress. Do you remember being a young actress, actor, and then like, listen, all right, you're not in this house. I mean, did you remember any of that?
I don't think I hope was never like that. It was never like put in my place from my behavior. I think it was more just sometimes realizing the opportunity and privilege I had through that role and what I was able to do. I think my parents like kept me level-headed in that way. But I honestly think all of us, because we had each other and we were the same age and we were kind of experiencing this thing at the same time, I think it was much easier than what I could maybe imagine being like a single child actor on a predominantly, adult set. Because you kind of don't know exactly where are you still a child or are you now just entirely a professional? So I kind of loved the fact that we were all a similar age and off camera we were doing our classes together and studying and just doing normal kid things and teenage things. So that kind of was super helpful. It felt less isolating in that way, which is, I think, when you start to think you're above others, when you begin to be a bit isolated.
Hey there, folks. It's Michael Rosenbaum, and boy, have I got a huge announcement for you. This has been a long time coming, and it's finally here. I'm doing a live podcast. My podcast, Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, is going live. Yeah, for the first time ever on Wednesday, October 11th at the iconic Regent in Los Angeles. And guess what? I'm not going to be alone. We're bringing a guest you might remember. He's been on the podcast. He's a friend of the show, the one, the only, Zachary Levi. We're going to catch up on life and mental health, and we're going to have a really good time with all of you. I think you know that. We're going to make it a lot of fun. We're planning a Q&A, maybe some fun games, other exclusive stuff you're only going to get by seeing it live. We're even hosting a VIP meet and greet for a small number of people before the show begins. Grab your tickets, mark your calendars, and get ready for the night of laughs, insights, and unforgettable moments. Tickets are limited, so don't miss your chance to join us on October 11th at the Regent in Los Angeles. Get your tickets now at insideofyoulive.com. This is going to be an epic night, so if you're in the area, come out and I'll see you there. I think it's also upbringing and how you treat other people, and some people don't have that and they become something that they probably wish they hadn't become. And it's good to have good mentors, good people around you, good friends around you, and especially when you're growing up in movies. You're growing up in this huge franchise. So it's got to be difficult, even though you seem normal, you seemed like everything's going, and when you look back and like it was relatively normal as normal as it could be. But did you ever deal with any sort of like anxiety or any kind of depression like as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel there was anxiety towards sort of, performing and doing the best thing, as the pressure, like as my character built, for instance.
Yeah.
It's like, oh gosh, will I do justice to this character that people love, So that was always kind of hard to do, especially when, inevitably a lot of the scenes of every character kind of was chopped down from the book to the film. So you kind of didn't really have as much to kind of show in the film. So sometimes that was a little disappointing because there were parts of the character that just didn't get to come through because there weren't the scenes to do that. So that made me feel like a bit anxious or just frustrated, I guess.
Yeah. Because as great as you were in the movies, it's like, some people say you were underserved, or like, it's like, the book, she should have been more explored. This character was even better. They could have made it, and then of course the contrast or the I'm sure they thought we have so much to do and so little time and whatever. But I'm sure it was a battle. The older you get and the more you realize this is an integral part of the movie, the franchise. And I want my character. Did you have conversations with the producers about it?
I mean, not really. I just don't think there was just no room for much change in those scripts.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like there was a million executives going through them all. And I think what I maybe took, which I don't take so much to heart now, is I kind of felt that like, maybe my anxiety was about like, oh, I'm going to be seen as like badly portraying this character, rather than later realizing, well, I wasn't really given the opportunity to do that. So it wasn't really my, fault exactly.
Yeah.
And when fans do share that kind of disappointment and they do it in a way that like, we know it wasn't
we want you,
we just wanted more of you. And that's the same with every character. I mean, if only they could have been 5-hour long movies, but it would have taken probably 2 years to film each one or something.
I think about like, I've talked to Matthew about it and some of the other guys and gals, and it's in the beginning, it's like, be thankful. This is what you're paying. It's not much, but that's what you're getting. Was there ever a time where you're like, okay, we can actually renegotiate now because I'm in all of these. I'm in the second one. Let's start. So you did renegotiate and all that, right?
Like in terms of as the films went on.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, obviously you had kind of your people to do that and help you to govern that and understand it. But yeah, obviously each kind of, that you're integral to the narrative and the storyline, and the amount of days I was also filming was obviously growing too. So yeah, I always felt like I was respected for my character and how she grew and developed. And I feel we were incredibly looked after on those, films, in the sense of too, like the ability to continue my education was always incredibly supported. And I was given so much to be able to do that. I didn't feel like my life stopped and I had to just give my entire life to this film. So that was very important to me. Yeah.
The forgotten people a lot of times on these movies and TV shows or whatever are the crew and how hard they work. And not only that, but like the first AD, second AD, third AD, TADs, they call them. But like, a lot of these people you were seeing every day, taking care of you and getting your food and bringing you to different places. Is there someone that you remember, like, this was someone that was a good egg who took care of us?
I mean, so many. And feel I often really try in interviews, like highlight the crew, that not only was I great friends with all the fellow cast, but I had incredible friends within the crew too. And it was working around those people, kind of how I said at the beginning, of like being really inspired by people's technical skills and craft, was why I then ended up going to film school, was really because I was amongst these incredible people who were so good at what they were doing. And I could notice, even in the scale of the 10 films, you could see camera trainees working their way through the camera department, or you could see people who started as little as, just small assistants in the production design department and working their way up to, drafts people or whatever. So it was really amazing to see how you could move through and you could grow. when I was just playing one character. It was nice to see like people grow through those films and get a lot back. And yeah, I mean, there were always, there's obviously some people you spend a lot more time with, whether that's kind of the makeup and hair department or the costume department. But I spent a lot of my spare time when I wasn't filming or doing school work in a lot of the other departments. So I spent a lot of time doing different like work experience or projects that I had to do for school, but trying to actually do them within the departments. So,
Wow.
And I was so grateful that people had the time for me and they answered all my curious questions. And you just don't, you don't get that always. People don't have the time to give that necessarily.
It's film
on
school.
Film. Yeah.
It's film. You're going to film school while working on your film.
Yeah, it was great.
In the film.
Yeah.
So it's like and the fact that those people gave you the time and helped you. And I mean, that's the best experience. That's the best experience I had, when I was, is it a plane? That's a plane. It's all right. But I remember, being on shows and asking the DP, it's like, hey, what lens are you on now? You're on 100. So what is that? Well, it's, you're getting the background's more out of focus, and what you're doing is everybody looks good, but here's why. It's a long lens, and and this is how many feet away is the ideal. Just like all these little things, and how do you do a wraparound? How do you cross the line? All these film things, and I learned it on set. I never went to film school. I learned year after year, day after day, taking an interest, directing an episode of the show, and it's just a crash course in film, and it's just awesome that you did that.
Yeah, it was incredible. And so, yeah, just so pleased that I had the opportunity to do that. And I'm so pleased that I was interested at the time, because I could have like just passed me by. And I was like, wow, I just was working alongside the like greatest people in their field, on that. Because we did luckily have some of the best technically, experienced people, and obviously actors as well. So it was like the ultimate, watch, listen kind of skills that I picked up on.
All right, who's the most intimidating? Robbie Coltrane, Alan Rickman, Richard Harris, Michael Gambon. Who's the most intimidating? When they walked on set, you're like, oh boy.
I think at first Alan Rickman, because he was so Snape. He wanted us to fear him. And he did a very good job at it, but you could tell that he was kind of having fun with it too, which I then later kind of realized as I kind of grew up. I was like, wait a minute, you're like definitely, enjoying this kind of thing. And actually, when I had the confidence to speak to him, he was such a like soft and lovely human being.
That voice.
Yeah.
Can you still hear that voice?
It's so deep. And
What are you doing? Or something. It was like a deep, I can't even do it.
I know, you'd be like, as you passed him in the hallway.
Did he ever do funny things like just quickly, just kind of look at you?
Or would just say things in a really Snape voice, like, but using my name in a sentence, and you'd be like, oh my gosh. And then Michael Gambon was like, he was kind of the same. Like, you think he's really scary, and at first you're like, oh, Dumbledore, But then he too had this very soft, like, humorous, like, cheeky nature to him too, which, like, upon having the opportunity to have more scenes, with him that weren't like massive Great Hall scenes, you're like, oh, you're fun. You're human too.
Right.
So that was always fun. When that you still have, you still definitely hold them on this pedestal, but they kind of, they soften and become more human.
Sure.
Like, yeah.
Who took their work most seriously? They just were in the zone always. They stayed in their character, or they were friendly or whatever, but they were in their character that you can remember. They go, oh, okay.
I mean, when on set, Alan Rickman would definitely be very in his character. I would say, who else? Maggie Smith.
I was just going to say Maggie Smith.
I'm trying to think who else. I feel like because we spent so much time with them, there's moments and memories
Ray
where
Fiennes.
they weren't. And Ray Fiennes was the most chilling, like, actor to work around ever. Just because, like, he had to be.
So he wasn't he wasn't funny and making jokes.
No. I mean, a little bit, but in a kind of like Voldemort way, if that makes sense.
Right. So you were kind of like, oh shit.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was one scene that I had in the last film that was kind of during the Battle of Hogwarts, and we're all in this courtyard scene, and if we for a moment like think Harry is dead, and he's just like basically playing and toying with me as I'm kind of like calling out and worried about Harry. And it was just like terrifying. Like the scene was just almost like he gave so much that it was so fun to act alongside, because it was just like you had been given like just the most incredible performance that you just were like,
What was the director? Did you feel like he got very little direction? They let him do what he was just doing?
Yeah, I feel like I'm sure he was probably the type of actor that would like go kind of quietly and speak to the director rather than in that kind
What
of
am I
space.
doing wrong? What do you want me to do?
Just because he wouldn't want to break the character to everyone else,
Right, yeah.
kind of thing.
Oh.
And just be raped asking, David Yates, like, how was that? But I'm sure he probably didn't need that much direction. Like he
Probably
was,
not.
From,
He was
the
devil
beginning,
incarnate.
he was like perfect for that role.
Yeah. What about Gary Oldman? Do you remember Gary Oldman?
I sadly didn't get to be in many scenes with him, and I love him.
He's my favorite.
He's just incredible as an actor. And Sirius Black, I was just so sad when he, when I read that in the books, when he like died, I was so sad. He was such a like hopeful character for Harry to actually have someone.
Right.
So I was saddened, and also just saddened because we wouldn't get to see much of Gary Oldman after that moment.
I love Gary Oldman.
And he's just lovely, yeah. So I only really met him offset, to be honest.
Right.
Not really in character.
I brought him pizza once. We hung out. The guy who cuts my hair. And I walk in and there's Gary. And going there for years. And I had met Gary before. I met him when he was with Isabella Rossellini when they were married back in the day. And I was like, no money, living in a 1-bedroom with 3 guys in New York. And my buddy was working at this place, Carmine's, in New York, this Italian restaurant. It's like 11:30 at night. He goes, "Hey, Rosie." He calls me. And he says, "Your hero's here." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Gary Oldman and Isabella Rossellini, they're here. They're eating." I go, "I'll be there." I had no money. I took a cab, went across town, and I waited till they were done. And I'm like 21, 22. And I just finally went, I'm like, "Hey, I had to say hello. I'm so sorry to interrupt. Miss Rossellini, big fan. Gary, Mr. Oldman, I'm just a huge fan. I'm an actor." And he goes, "Where are you from?" And I go, "Well, I went to college in Kentucky." He goes, "Kentucky? Yeah, I think I've flown over there on my way out to LA once." And then he laughed, and Isabella kind of smiled at him and goes, "Gary, whatever." And he goes, "You're an actor?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You want to work with me?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, he grabs my hand, and he gives this long beat and looks in my eyes and goes, "You will."
Wow, there you
You
go.
will. And then fast forward, I had him sign that, my Dracula, "I have crossed oceans of time to find you."
Yes.
But I brought him pizza once, and he's the sweetest guy. And
Yeah, he's
they
really
always say
lovely.
don't meet your heroes, but
Yeah.
I'm glad I did.
That's good.
He was great. I know it's probably a tough subject, but like Robbie Coltrane, when he passed, were you close with him?
Yeah, he was so ready and open to be him. I feel like it took a lot longer sometimes with the other adult actors to be like, okay, they're down to like talk to us. Robbie was always like Hagrid, he's that like uncle that you want to have, that like perfect teacher, that kind of someone to lean on.
Just fun.
Just like lovely, warm, fun. And, just would be like, he had such good memory of like, you would tell him stories and he would like remember them, years later, and just really know you and get to know everyone. He was just a very loving, giving person that had just such a big heart. And Hagrid was always one of actually my favorite characters in the book. And he just did such great justice to that character. And it was so, yeah, I mean, all of us were so sad because we did spend a really lot of time with him. He always had so much time for you. And that was always so nice and always made you feel, not like a child, or not, not that anyone really did. I think that's what made us grow up in a good way. But yeah, it was really sad to hear that he had passed. And
Were you surprised? Did you know anything about his sickness?
I did a little bit, not like in full detail, but I definitely, you know, having seen him quite recently when we shot the reunion thing, the Harry Potter reunion thing we did. That was the last time I saw him, and yeah, I mean, he kind of
You could tell something.
You could tell that, and, you know, shared that he wasn't 100%. So it was, I mean, too soon for him, but it was sad. But I'm so grateful that I did really get to know him and spend a lot of time with him, as we all did. He was very loved to chat to the kids and what are you all talking about, thinking about. Like, he wanted to be down with everyone.
Right. He wanted to feel young. Hey guys,
yeah, for sure.
Right. Was he the one that you remember out of all the adults, the adult actors that were there, that you felt was the most fun to be around, or were there anyone else that you really felt comfortable with?
He definitely, was very much on the top of that kind of being comfortable and warm and giving. And I obviously spent a lot of time with Julie Walters and Mark Williams being my parents. And we had so many scenes in the Weasley home, and I definitely got very close with them and felt very at home with them. So that was always really nice. You know, I feel, you know, on reflecting on the whole series and journey, I'm so grateful that I was a Weasley, because I got all these other scenes that weren't just being kind of a Gryffindor and at Hogwarts, but we had all these additional family scenes. And I think the kind of what they represented, the Weasley family, and the kind of good morals that they presented were lovely to be a part of.
Yeah. And it was awesome that you even after you got to do video games and you did the rides at Universal.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Forever.
You know, you go to the cons where I met you and you meet the fans, and it's been all these years, and it's just it's so cool. But now it's cooler is all the stuff you're doing now, all the stuff that you were working towards, getting tutored on set, and then going to college, university, film school, getting a degree, and now, you know, directing and producing your own stuff. And you directed, you know, some really good stuff. You know, went to Tribeca, one went to Cannes, right? I mean, that's what? That's big stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, you directed actors like Jason Isaacs, who was also in the Harry Potters. Did you just call him one day and say, hey,
I've got a role for you? Yeah. The first person I asked to be in something, you know, was the first piece I made that was basically my graduation film with David Thewlis. And I really had kind of written this role sort of for him, you know, in mind. And I was so nervous to ask him. But, you know, my mom was like, the worst thing he can say is no.
Right.
You've got to ask, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember a group of us were in New York promoting a Harry Potter exhibition that was opening. And he was there. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity, you know? And so I kind of explained to him about it and everything. He's like, well, yeah, do you want to give me the script? And look, I'm really honest. If the character doesn't speak to me and I don't like the script, you know, I'm probably going to say no.
Look, I'm going to say no is what I'm telling you.
I'm going to say no because the script's probably terrible.
Right.
I was like, okay, cool, no pressure. I hope the script is good. And I remember he was like, yeah, I slid it through his hotel, you know, under his door or whatever. And then he liked the script.
How long did it take him to read it?
Not that long. I think he got back to me in 2 weeks or something like that. And I was just like, oh gosh, now I actually have to direct him. You know, I was so nervous, to direct someone who's been, you know, so experienced. But again, what was so lovely is he was willing and ready to, you know, and wanted me to thrive in that experience. And so he was just very, giving, I think, and patient, and just you know, direct me, this is all good. Let's go.
You know what's difficult, I think, is when I've directed things, I feel like there's this pressure you put on yourself that I have to be great. I have to prove to them that I'm worthy, that I could do this. I want everybody to see that I am capable, that I am competent. And when you can just relax and just know that you're competent, and that, of course, that takes time like anything else. But it's that stuff that I'm like, stop worrying about that. What story do you want to tell? What is important to you? What, you know, enjoy these moments instead of worrying so much about, because there's going to always be people who hate whatever you do. And so how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it kind of ebbs and flows, and sometimes it comes up for me way more on projects than others. And if it's been a bit of a longer gap between a project, I am a bit like, like this is a kind of uncomfortable moment as I kind of try on that kind of role again. I think it's always that, you know, if you obsess too much about thinking you need to be the leader of this group and like, let's go, you know, I've got all the ideas and I know everything, then it's going to be stressful, like you say. But if you just focus on the script, the story, just that scene, also just really lean on the people you're collaborating with. You know, you've hired and them for a reason when it comes to these other people. And I think the best lesson I learned too is I often used to think like, I need the answer right now, or I need to interpret like how that take went and quickly now give my direction, like, you know, and need to always have it fully formed. And I think the best thing I learn is just know and be okay with moments where I'm like, let's just take a couple of minutes. Like, I'm just going to think before I say, and not just immediately give a direction that I'm like, actually, no, that's not what I meant. But in that pressure, I kind of said something. So I feel like taking my time and being vulnerable, I think, is the best thing to do. You know,
shows
like,
you care.
Yeah, and so that people will be much more, I feel like, trust you if you're like, you know what, actually, I'm not sure what we're going to do next, but I just need a second. Let's talk about it. Like, you know, do this, rather than kind of giving like really confusing direction that like, I don't think she knows what she wants, you know? So those have been good moments. But, you know, there's definitely been moments where I haven't taken those beats and pauses, and I have felt,
incompetent,
you know, stressed and incompetent.
I've done that too.
And just out of my body, like not in the day.
Yes, disassociation. Like it's almost like, you know, it's like, because you want people to think you know what you're doing. And that moment where you just say, you know, Scorsese, I read somewhere that he will sometimes just take, I need 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He'll go to his trailer, he'll sit down, he'll think about things, and, you know, he'll meditate and sort of on the idea, and then come back and be ready to go.
Because there's some people could be holding and waiting on your word, you know, it's like you can become kind of frozen in those moments.
Yeah, and also I wonder, like you said, vulnerability. It's like being honest with somebody. Say, what do you want me to do? And I, you know, to be honest with you, I'm not sure at this moment. Give me a beat. Let me think about that. You know, let me think about that. I'm not going to give you some answer that I'm not even, I'm not confident in.
And I would want that too, as I speak to like a DP or a production designer. I would want them to say that to me, not like give me a quick answer that I'm like, that doesn't feel like a good idea, or that doesn't feel like a you idea. You know, I would like that given back to me, I think.
Of course, if Scorsese said something and I said, what do you want me to do? He goes, no, I don't know. I'd be like, what? You're Martin Scorsese. You published a book.
Yes.
Do you just want to do everything? Is there anything you don't want? Now you're doing a documentary that you're producing and directing, right?
Yeah.
When does that start?
We start filming in like 3 weeks.
And what's it about? Can you tell?
Yeah, so it's kind of based on my book, Go Gently. It's probably going to have a similar type title.
Go Gently, Actionable Steps to Nurture Yourself and the Planet.
That's it. Yeah, so that came out last year. And essentially the book is about individual actions that we can be taking around the climate crisis and making the really large, scary, big, overwhelming topics feel kind of like they relate to our day-to-day life, and seeing how we kind of fit in the broader picture, and how we can be more informed with the choices we make through what we consume or how we live and things like that. So the show is actually going to be not about the individual kind of action and more about the collective and community-based action. So I'm basically taking a road trip from Los Angeles to Portland, meeting a broad spectrum of people, all kind of doing something for their community, the climate, or just kind of having a great relationship to nature. And the show, I essentially wanted to make a show that made us think and believe that humans are great and we can do amazing things, rather than the many documentaries that already exist out there that talk about, you know, the serious kind of terrifying truths of the climate crisis. I wanted it to be more about a celebration of humans and how we can be good. So yes, it's going to be like a 4-week road trip, meeting a lot of different people, staying in different places, from camping to hotels to wherever, and essentially just celebrating the beautiful landscapes we're going to go through.
You know something? I was just thinking about this. It's like the proverbial we see a fire, and what do? We put it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we put it out because right now we see that it's burning something down. It's having a negative effect on whatever it, in simplest terms. But the environment is pretty much on fire. It's always on fire, and if we don't see the fire, we assume it's like what I'm trying to say is it's almost like let's live in today. We have to take care of today. We can't worry about tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so environment is so important, and the pollution and the plastics and all these things. And, I'm not great either. I'm good, but I could be a lot better. And it's just like, I don't know why it's not implemented in high schools, grade schools, like just really part of the curriculum of like, this is what we do. This is how we operate. And we're taking so long technologically to adapt to this situation, or sort of like, we don't see that the planet's in crisis unless you're a scientist, unless you believe science, right? So I guess it's like, how do you get people to really back it? And you do documentaries, you write books, you do this. And it's like you just got to keep waking people up and saying you can actually help. If there's more of you, Bonnie.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I think like what you say, like if you bring it home, and whether that has to be through someone else's story who's been more directly affected and on the front lines of a crisis of climate, whether that's a hurricane, a typhoon, a wildfire, or exposure to toxins, like has just happened in the train crash in Ohio. Like if you see a story that's like, oh, that's just 10 miles from my house or someone I know's house, like as these stories sadly are going to come closer to our sphere and vicinity, then we are more likely to react. Like however well you can tell a story of someone far away experiencing something, or, distant marine ecology suffering from microplastics, like that is quite far and hard to like actually put into a scale that we comprehend. But I think as stories are told, documentary or narratively, and it brings some emotion about, like we will then more interact, because as much as obviously science is kind of that core pillar, like sometimes the way it's described is not a way that like we can kind of get around or emote or like understand. So I think that's what I am drawn to, like how do we bring in the humanism and the emotions to these things so that they become people, even if they're an animal, like they become people. And I think that's the power of like storytelling, and I think people are more, just how we work as human beings, like how, sometimes we need to be tricked into certain things to do them. For instance, like if you incentivized actions that you could take to better your environment, you probably would do it rather than just doing it for the sake of it. When you put in charges on plastic bags in the grocery store, or, certain things like that, or you get sort of tax credits or rebates for doing certain things, like we work that way. If we get incentivized by something and we get kind of it's
like a child.
We
are all
simple.
Children. It's like, would you like an ice cream? If you clean your room, you'll get an ice cream.
And I think that's what, is unfortunate about the government. And when we can feel like, oh, we're not moving fast enough, like there's only so much we can bully and feel bad about as individuals, when really those in power are not doing enough, and they're not acting in the emergency state that we need to act. So it's always that push-pull, I think, of how terrible we can feel on our own. Like I feel like there's only so far you can spiral into that kind of doomism when it's just not helpful. You have to kind of like...
That's smart. That makes perfect sense. Well, I love it. I love that you're doing that. I love that you're so serious about it and you just don't stop. I mean, working with Greenpeace, and it just keeps building. And I know you traveled and, looking out the oceans and the plastics and all the things that are happening. And it's a lot to take on, along with your career, but you're also like, hey, this is part of my life, part of my career is doing this and making documentaries and writing books and awesome. All right, this is called Shit Talking with Bonnie Wright. These are rapid fire. These are for my patrons. They're awesome. I love you guys. They support the show. They really give back and keep the show going. Patreon.com/inside of you to join. Here we go. Ray H. What has been the most challenging thing to work on?
Ooh, well, probably honestly still Harry Potter, even though like, I think in perspective, yeah, it was a massive challenge. 10 years, stamina.
Stamina.
Yeah.
I think when you're a kid, you don't even realize. When you're young, you can power through shit.
I was like, I'm fine.
Now I'm like,
yeah.
Hey,
on perspective, I'm like, wow, that was pretty hard.
Oh my gosh. And imagine being Harry.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Oh my gosh, that's daunting, right? I guess as a kid, you're excited and you're just like, oh, where do I go next? Where do I go next? And then all of a sudden you get old and you're like, oh my God, that was when I could do it. And I don't know if anybody could do. Well, people do it. I just couldn't do it. Sophie M., can you tell us about your audition? We already talked about that. Sorry, Sophie. Alan Rickman. Did Alan Rickman have an intimidating presence? We talked about that. So I'm just mentioning your name. Your name is Alan Rickman. The guy's name, I think, is Alan Rickman.
Wow.
It can't be, but that's what Bryce has on there. Was there anyone else that you were afraid to work with? Not that you were afraid to work with him, but were kind of...
well, yeah, I think after
Michael
we spoke about Ray Fiennes now, I'm like, yeah, it was pretty terrifying.
Maggie, she was kind of serious.
Yeah, she was definitely serious, yeah.
Tom N., who had the best practical jokes on the set of Harry Potter?
Oh, definitely James and Oliver Phelps.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they were them, you know?
Are you going on their travel show?
I went on the first season.
You did? I'm going to go on the next season. They asked me to do it, so they have this awesome travel. What's the show called?
Fantastic Friends.
Fantastic Friends. Guys, go look for that. I'm promoting it because I love those guys. Good shout out to Dan. I might do a show, my own show.
Cool.
With Dan, and so it'll be cool too. I'm trying to get my buddy John Heater to join me.
Fun.
Jules, if you had creative control over Ginny's role in the Harry Potter franchise, what would you have liked to see or imagine she would have done if she had a larger role? I mean, we've talked about that, but like, what's the one thing you think of?
Oh, so many things. I mean, I think her development and relationship with Harry, like there's in the book, there are all these little kind of moments that build up to it and like give it reason. So just those nuanced moments of like their relationship developing would have been great. I also feel like there were many more scenes kind of showing this kind of like confidence of her, which is like through the Dumbledore's army scenes or loads of Quidditch she was in. Obviously, she becomes a professional Quidditch player in her later life. So I think they would have helped.
Maya P., what is it like directing actors we worked with as a child? I mean...
Pretty scary, but pretty...
but she did it.
I was pretty honored, yes.
Do you know there was a play, my friend Troy Rudolph told me this, there was a 2-part stage play. It's 19 years later, after Harry Potter, after the epilogue, I guess. And your second child goes to Hogwarts and shows difficulties he has with his parents and in his adventures that they go on. There was controversy with the play. Did you ever hear about that?
The Cursed Child play?
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. I mean, it will...
I didn't know. Did you see it? Oh, no.
But yeah, it's I've seen it. It's I saw it with the original cast in London when it was first on. I mean, it was part of the... Obviously, it was written by someone else who wrote the book as a play, and lots of people read the book. And then it was kind of okay to sort of go into production, and J.K. Rowling kind of was a supporting kind of producer or some role on it. And the biggest question that everyone wants to know is, are they going to be making like a TV film version of it? And I don't know any more intel. I mean, it would be pretty fun because also the characters, you know, it's really about the children. It's not about our characters, so it wouldn't be a massive role. It would be really about these kids and the new generation.
But there's part
totally, yeah. But it would just be more of a kind of
adventure.
Yeah, so it would be fun. But I have no idea if they'll do it.
All politics aside, J.K. Rowling, and what do you think of her as a creator, as an author, as
Yeah, that's a lovely question. I think brilliant. I mean, you know, she created this incredible world that was so deeply layered and just a joy to be a part of. Like, there was just so much material in those books to help you create this magical world. And when I go back and like read the first book or watch the first movie, it's just like, wow, like this is just like exactly what you want stories to be. Like
Yeah.
to fully escape into this like entirely built world that is like solid and real. And I
Yeah.
think it's really from, you know, I'm a big lover of, you know, the genre of fantasy or sci-fi and those kind of things. So to actually see someone like achieve a world that's fully like you're absorbed in is really
Yeah.
cool.
Do you, I guess it's like, don't you kind of wish, I think a lot of people wish that if they go to London, if they go to England, it was Harry Potter world.
Everywhere.
It just, it looks like, is that based on old England and things like that? Pretty much is, right?
Yeah, I mean, you
and
know,
fantasy, probably.
yeah, like obviously like I don't know, like the shopping kind of street, like Diagon Alley and those kind of things, you know, there are little kind of cobbled streets of old shops that exist in London that you're like, this is the inspiration, or small
Right.
towns that exist like that. So it doesn't feel, very steeped in that kind of history and architecture, but just in a more odd kind of magical, mystical way.
Yeah.
But I love that London is really a part of the films, having, you know, I'm a Londoner, grew up in London, and I love seeing those scenes in the films, particularly like some moments where they're just like flying on broomsticks like down the Thames.
like,
You're
what
like,
the
yeah,
hell?
sure.
What's your favorite film out of all of them? And and lastly, what is your favorite moment for you as a character?
My favorite film, personally, I loved filming The Chamber of Secrets, the second, because that was like a massive step up for my character. And then I loved Deathly Hallows Part 2, because it had all the Hogwarts battle sequences, and I always loved those kind of high energy moments, and there was like a lot at stake, and sadly quite a lot of characters died, so it was like very emotional. So that was really fun, that even though it was the last film, so it was kind of sad knowing it was coming to an end. But personally, but then story-wise, I always loved The Order of the Phoenix, which is the 5th one. I feel like every day there was like a different mood. You're like, oh no, I love the Goblet of Fire when you know.
Right.
But favorite moment, that's hard.
You don't have to give me
I
mean, there's a lot of moments.
A favorite moment, just because I was like excited to be in the middle of the scene. There's this great scene in the Battle of Hogwarts where basically like Bellatrix Lestrange like goes for me, and Mrs. Weasley sort of like stands in my way, and they have this little like, you know, moment that's written so well. You know, there's this great line Mrs. Weasley and Julie was so excited to say, which is like, stay away from my daughter, you bitch, or something like that. And like in the weeks like leading up to knowing that they were going to film this scene, you know, you could tell they were like, you know, they were like winding each other up and getting each other really excited to this scene. And I was just so excited to be in the middle of it.
That's awesome.
And they had fun with it, and it was good. Yeah.
You do any impressions?
Not really.
Not one?
Maybe like of
What?
Maybe
Come on, try one.
of what? Of who?
Can you do an impression of Maggie?
Ronald Weasley. She said stuff like that, like 10 points from Gryffindor.
Do it again. No, that's good. Do it again. I love that. I love that. I do the roll the R's again.
Ronald Weasley, you're late again.
That's so good. Do you like doing accents and things and goofing
I do.
around?
When I was younger, I was like obsessed with accents. Like I loved accents. My mum's side of the family all live in Australia.
Can you do one?
And so I used to be obsessed with Australia. Like I was like, why do we live in London? We can live at the beach. Like, what
Yeah.
are we doing? And so every time we were in Australia, I would like have this accent, and I'd be like trying to, you know, be Australian. And my brother's like, shut, like, you're not from here. You know, I was like, stop, you know, like ruining my character. And then my dad is from Leeds, which is where Matthew's from.
I've
And
been
so
there.
I used to love doing a northern accent.
Let me
and
hear
all
in
my
Leeds.
cousins.
I wouldn't even know.
I used to, like, my cousins used to just be the fun. They'd be all like long words like, Mom, no, I don't want to do that. Like, speak like this. Like, where are you going? What are you having? It's what are you having? People say when it's like, what are you having for dinner or something? Or like,
It's just slower.
Yeah, very slow, nice, like long, elongated.
I remember him, like, there's this band, the Arctic Monkeys, that he
yes.
loves the Arctic
Yeah.
Monkeys. And I was like, who's this? He's like, Arctic Monkeys.
Arctic
The way he said it, I
monkeys.
remember. He goes, Arctic Monkeys. What? The Arctic Monkeys. Or whatever how he said it. He's going to get mad at me because I don't sound like that. This has been a treat. Did you have fun?
I did.
I told you to have fun. It's easy.
It's easy. With you, it's easy.
With me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what's your handle?
Oh, at this is Be Right.
At this is Be Right. Follow her if you haven't already followed her. She's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
With Bonnie. She's no BS. Mm-mm. When you meet her, she's kind and not, but she's like, I'm not, she doesn't put up with bullshit. Mm-mm. So why would you? And she's smart. She directs, she acts, she does it all. And it was a treat having her here in the studio. Thanks for your time, Bonnie. I really appreciate you. And again, if you'd like the podcast, please subscribe, write a review, helps the podcast. And if you missed out on something, I say all the stuff in the intro, patreon.com/inside of you. That really, patrons save the show. So join that and support the podcast. You get so many perks for Patreon. One of which are your names mentioned at the end of every episode. Zooms with me on occasion, YouTube lives. We do private YouTube lives where I play some music and you guys ask me anything you want. You get to ask questions for the ShitTalkin segment. There's so many perks and it's become a real community and people really love each other and join because you're really saving the show. Patreon.com/inside of you. Let's get to the top tiers. Ryan, I liked how this worked.
Yeah.
Let's try it again.
I like looking at the names too.
All right, here we go.
It's nice for me.
I'm going to do a voice, and he has to repeat the voice, and you guys tell me if Ryan does a good job.
Posture.
Nancy D, Leah S, Kristen, Little Lisa, Yukiko,
Jill E, Brian H, Nico P, Robert B, Jason W, Sophie M.
See, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raj C, Joshua D, Jennifer N,
Stacy L, Jamal F, Janelle B,
Mike A.L., Dan Sobramo, 99 more, San Diego M, Chad W., Leanne P., Matty S.,
Linda N, Dave H, Sheila G, Brad D, Ray H, Tabitha D, Coors Banquet Beer.
I've got diabetes. If you're suffering from diabetes, get yourself a bowl of Quaker Oats right now.
Tom N, Talia M, Betsy D, Angel M,
Rhiannon C, Corey K, Dev Nexon, Michelle A, Jeremy C,
Brandy D, Joey M, Eugene Leah, Corey, Jake B, Angela F,
Mel S, Christine S, Eric H, Shane R, Andrew M, Tim L,
Tim L, Amanda R, Jen B, Stephanie K,
Jor L, Jammin J, Leanne J, Luna R,
Mike F, Stone H, Brian L, Kendall L, Garrison,
Jessica B, Kyle F, Marisol P, Kaylee J, Mickey L,
Brian A, Ashley F, Marion Louise L, Romeo B,
Veronica AQ, Frank this is what's his face from
Bill from
Silence of the Lambs,
Frank B,
John T, Nikki L, Alan H, April R, Cassie B,
Derek N, JDW,
Michelle L, Kalmbam.
Kalmbam.
I love it.
Oh my God.
We love you from Michael Rosenbaum here in the Hollywood Hills, California.
I'm Ryan Tates.
He's Ryan Tace. Let's wave. Hey guys, be good to yourself. That was a lot of fun. We'll see you next week.
All right.